Good afternoon. How the devil are you people today, man? We've got another great discussion. We're actually going to talk about this man's journey right here in deconstructing from Christianity. And we're going to meet a very knowledgeable guest today. This is Coach Renz. How you doing today, sir?
Doing pretty good there, Scott. Thank you, and Sophia. Thank you for having me on the show. I greatly appreciate it.
Absolutely, man. This is an honor to have you. I've seen a lot of your work before. You know, probably over the last 8 months, I've been keeping up with your channel, watching the stuff. I'm a binge watcher, you know, especially about ex-Christians and
Right.
atheists and agnostics, and because I was in that camp, pretty much still am, I guess, in a way. I'm sort of an agnostic, but you know, we talk about different metaphysical ideas and philosophies. And Sophia, she's a mystic, you know, she has experiences, she has a lot of knowledge when it comes to that kind of stuff. So we're going to talk all about that, but really I just want to get mainly into more about you, Mr. Lorenzo Reed. We're going to talk about
your name's Lorenzo, like my son.
Yeah,
Wow.
that's right.
That's an amazing son you have there. Top tier.
Yeah. It's
Wonderful
one
name.
of the best names ever. Oh, God.
Uh-oh. Sounds like the dog wants to chime in.
Bye, Felicia. Bye, Felicia.
Yeah, get him out of here. Get him out of here. Oh, I'm going to mute you. There you go. All right, man. I'm going to let you take the stage. So I'm just going to start off. Where were you raised? Like, how did it all begin? The when, the where, the what? Tell us all about that. We want to hear your story, man.
All right. So I want to again thank you for allowing me to be here, and thank everybody who's watching this show. And I hope that you know, my story resonates with some people, and I look forward to it resonating with your audience. So I grew up in Marietta, Georgia, which is a suburb on the northern suburb of Atlanta. And I grew up in a Baptist family, and we were typical. We went to church every Sunday. Nobody worked on Sundays. I was born in 1971, by the way, so they can have a time frame. You know, we went to Bible studies on Wednesday. If you was participating in something, so more than likely a Thursday or Friday or Saturday, you was also at church. So it was your typical Southern Black family in the South going to, well, I said Southern. So your typical Black family going to church. But around about 9 years old, 8, 9 years old, that's when my grandmother started making me pay attention to what they was talking about in the church. And so I'm listening, and I'm listening to everything. And then one day, the pastor is telling us, he's giving a sermon, and he's talking about he's telling the parable of the rich man, and how he says at the end of the parable that it's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter the gates of heaven. And then proceeds to hold up a sewing needle and says that a camel can't get through this. And then proceeds to say that all rich people go to hell. So you should stop trying to go to heaven. I mean, stop trying to get rich. You know, and this is a congregation of Black people. Most of them are below the poverty line or at the poverty line. So I found this very disconcerting at 9 years old. So I spent like the next year or year and a half trying to convince this man that I could liquefy a camel. I could, you know, string it up, find something to open the eye of the needle more, you know, just figuring out in my 9-year-old, 10-year-old mind how I can get this camel through the eye of the needle, because, you know, we went nights without food. So, you know, days without food, I should say, and had to travel to other family members' homes to eat. So being poor wasn't something that I was going to live with. And then right around about a year, I was about 10 and a half. And I had other questions. There was other sermons he had gave, and I was disagreeing with the ideals of the sermons or what the meanings of the sermons were. So I was challenging him on a whole bunch of different of his sermons. And then one day I was about 10 and a half, and I brought the Bible up, and I was showing him that he was wrong in one of his sermons, that there was a contradiction, basically. I don't remember what it was. And then one of the mothers came up and she snatched me by my arm and she said, "Why you stop Bob and trying to embarrass the pastor? You know he can't read." Well, this very bothering. By this time, I had read the Bible front to back at least twice. And so I remember that verse that said, study to show yourself approved. So I was very concerned about that. I was like, hold on, how can he study and he can't read? Then the only thing, and this is my 10, 11-year-old mind. If he can't read it, he can't study it. So how do he know what he's been told is true? So even though I was trying to look at things, I was looking at things from a child's mind, and at that time frame, my mind started really elevating in his thought process, because I started seeing a bigger picture here, that these people, our people, Black people, went through this whole process of believing in something without actually researching it, knowing it, diving deep into it. And that I started finding out that many pastors couldn't read back in those, back at that time frame, because these were people who were born in the 1920s and 30s and 40s, and many of them couldn't read. So that was problematic for me. But I still wanted to believe in this book. I still did. Everything I was doing at that point, and I started reading and studying, and we got kicked out of that church. Well, I got kicked out of the church, so my grandmother left. And so my grandmother leaves, everybody leaves. Aunts, uncles, everybody, we all leave. And we bounced around from church to church to church because I was questioning every pastor. I was about 12, and my grandmother just told me, "You don't have to go to church anymore." But I kept studying. She said, "As long as you study the Bible, I see you studying the Bible, you don't have to go to church anymore. We're good." But I really wanted Christianity to be true. All my friends were Christians. Everybody that I knew was Christian. My community was Christian, So it was a lot of pressure to maintain Christianity, because everything was so, about that. Even like the drug dealers, when they drove by the churches and they would have their music blasting, they turned their music down when they come by the church. So the church was the center. No matter how many, every church was the center of the community where I grew up. So I wanted to be Christian, and then I got married to my high school sweetheart, and I wanted her. She was Christian, so I got to make this thing work. But I started, and the thing about it, I was a little kid, 10, 11 years old, going to the libraries, reading reference books, reading archaeological books, finding out that there were magazines about archaeology, and reading sociology books and psychology books. So I'm going to the library. I know a lot of people, young kids, don't know what that's like or what that is, but I was going to the library. I'm studying everything I could possibly get my hands on. The homeless guys were some of the biggest helpers while I was there, because they lived and breathed the library, so they knew where everything was at. So, and I know I'm making this long, so I'm gonna start cutting it shorter. So I go to the Marine Corps at 19 years old, and Desert Storm is happening, so I get put on a boat, and we're going over to Europe, and we're going into the Middle East and all that. So I figured this is my opportunity to really see some stuff. So I got to spend 8 weeks in Israel, 4 weeks in Italy, a week in Saudi Arabia. So I got a chance to I lied my way into being able to go to Mecca. And I spent 2 days in Egypt. So of course I went to see the pyramids and whatnot. But then I got to spend that 8 weeks in Israel and those 4 weeks in Italy at that time frame. And that's when it really started hitting me that these stories are a concoction, that they are made up, that they are really the outgrowth of these cultures at their time frame and their perception of the world. That when and then I realized that some things were just flat out lies. So like when I went to Rome, and because I was working with Sixth Fleet Commander, I was able to get permission to get a good close-up view of Constantine's ark. And of course, the story of Constantine is he saw Jesus in the sky, Sol Invictus. And he saw the cross in the sky. And Sol Invictus, Jesus visited him in his tent. And the soldiers painted crosses on their shields. There was none of that on his ark. There was Apollo, there was Mithra, but there was no Jesus. There were no crosses. And when you look at Titus's ark, when he finished his siege on Jerusalem in 70 CE, he got the menorahs, he got everything on there that shows what he accomplished. So of course Constantine should have everything he accomplished, but he didn't have any of those things. So then I was able to work with a curator who allowed me to be able to see and translated for me some of Eusebius of Caesarea's work, and I see when the story changed. And when he first defeated Maxentius, he said nothing about seeing the cross in the sky and any of those things. But then when he had the Edict of Milan and he met with the bishops, the Christian bishops, all of a sudden he changed the story. So I see why the ark did not have any of those things in there, because he hadn't told that lie yet. And then when you go to Israel, you get to see that, okay, Constantine's mother Helena came in here and she just said, this is where, local people say this is where the cross would have been, and bam, she claimed it. This is where this is the cross itself, and she claimed it. And then she sent out pieces of it all over the world, all over the European world, these pieces. And there's so many pieces that you can build a forest, literally. Like, that's not even being hyperbolic. That's a literal thing. There's so many so-called pieces of the cross you can build a forest. So I started to see how politics played into all these things. And then I met, and this is over a 2-year period, then I met this gentleman at the Tel Aviv Museum. He was a curator there while I was in Israel. And he was the first one, and this is what really hit me. I was on a tour, and we were going through the Muslim market, and after you pass the Muslim market, you go through the old wall. And our tour guide was like, okay, for all you Christians, he was a Czechoslovakian guy. I'll never forget that part. But he was like, for all you Christians, we're now going through the eye of a needle, so you all can get rich. And that was like his joke. And it was a joke to everybody else. Everybody else was ha ha he he. Now I just was in Oman a week earlier, and a camel stepped on my tent, and I saw that big old camel walking down the street. So I know what a camel looked like. Recent experience at that point. Man, I'm looking at this 6 foot, well, it was about 8 foot tall, 6 foot wide gateway that has a little
right.
Man, the tour group gone. I'm just walking back and forth through this damn door like an idiot. I'm just going back and forth. And then this guy just comes up to me and he was like, you just found out what an eye of a needle is. He's like, you're an American and you just found out what an eye of a needle is, didn't you? I was like, yeah. So he broke it down to me. He said, well, what that really meant was that you got to be able to get off your camel, take off all your goods, because back in those days, the eye of a needle that were high enough for your camel to walk through, you couldn't ride through it. So the tax collectors can tax you, but it also minimized how many people can come through there when they're attacking you. So he was explaining to me that what you really got to do is just be able to separate yourself from all your materialism. And I was like, all right. And then the small gate, he was like, that's where you have to crawl through it. So you got to humble yourself. I said, okay. Now, mind you, I'm still trying to be a Christian at this time frame. So it's just, Christians don't know how to teach their book. They don't know their book. I'm gonna be the one that's gonna teach them their book, is how my mind was at this time. I'm only like 19, 20 years old. And I finally catch up with my group at the Wailing Wall, but I pen pal with that man for about 7 years. Like 7 years. We actually had a book. We had a book that we would send back and forth. Because the amount of questions and answers that was coming back and forth, you need to be able to flip back.
Right. This is before the internet and stuff.
Yeah.
Like emails and crap. Yeah.
And I'm mad I lost that in my last military move. That part of my military move, I lost that book. But anyway, so I'm going through that process, I'm learning all these different things. I'm learning about the history. I'm learning about the politics. I start delving into, I'm learning about Islam too at the same time. But it only took me about a year learning Islam that I was like, I know I don't want to do this one. I went to Mecca and ran around that rock for 7 circles, throwing rocks at it, because you gotta certify that you're a Muslim when you go. So I knew we were going, so the military Muslim mosque, I certified with them before we went, right? So that I could go to Mecca, because otherwise you can't get in. So I did all these things. I'm looking at this stuff, and then just over the years of studying, then after that, just studying with David. His name is David, who was at the David SC, who was in Israel, studying with him, and then following archaeologists like John Allen West, and just starting to read PhD papers. So one of the things that they taught me was, and the internet had just didn't come out till like 90s, really come out to like 96, 97. They had already taught me to research PhD papers, research college libraries, get the magazines or the outlets that the museums publish in, and that's where you're really going to learn some things. So that's why, like, when people ask me what books to read, I tell them I don't read books anymore. When it comes to this stuff, I don't read books. I read PhD papers. I read archaeological findings. And
right.
Because that's where the deeper information, and then they will have peer review. And so I read the peer reviews. So I was doing that all the way up until I truly mentally had deconstructed by the time I was 27, but it took until 37, about 36, 37 for me to emotionally deconstruct, because I was still attached to my wife at the time. I was still attached to my community, still wanted those people who were my friends to still be my friends. So I was afraid to fully walk away, but it wasn't until I got divorced and my kids were getting older that my mindset was okay, no, because I want my children to be able to choose whatever they want. That was an agreement before we even had children. I got forced into a religion. But then with the betrayal when I saw how people betrayed me, who I had given more of myself to them than I had given to my own family, in the divorce, I allowed the religion thing to keep me. I allowed that to keep me there. So I just realized that, what, true friendship, true love ain't got nothing to do with all that other stuff. It got to do with the person you are. So if you can't love me for who I really am, and you got to hate me because my views are different than yours, I don't need you in my life. So
it's almost like the Christianity just lost all the way around with you, like from just the intellectual studies to the attachment, with the people and all that. So it was a big loss.
Yeah.
And it seems it seemed like you realize that it's just all very dishonest. Like, you didn't see where it made any sense, where anybody did any real research. It was just dogma.
And that's exactly the truth of it all. It was just it's emotional warfare based on a bunch of lies in order to control people, and
psychological warfare.
Yeah, and I just had to walk away from it at that point, because I just came to, at that point I had way enough sufficient information The only thing that was hurtful is I felt alone. Now, granted,
Right.
my family never disconnected from me.
But you
But
know, a lot of people would say like you know, the church has always been a main stronghold in the black community. Like that's all that a lot of leaders talk about is like the strength
mhm.
of the black church, how it you know, so many things were accomplished for black people over the years because of the black church. How do you respond to that?
It's easy for them to make that claim. Well, okay, so in one extent, it's true. The black church has been a center of push for change or unity within our community, but at the same time, it's been the biggest detriment. You know, we people like to focus on Martin Luther King and his push and the fact that he was a pastor and he had other pastors with him. But if you didn't have the Black Panthers, you didn't have the Nation of Islam, you didn't have all these other organizations out there who was also grassroots building, it wouldn't have happened with him alone. It wouldn't have happened with just him, the church. And matter of fact, the majority of churches was against him. People don't realize that growing up in Atlanta, you learn that most of the black churches were against what he was doing, thought that he was a troublemaker.
Mm.
So, but on one hand, it did keep us close together, it seemed like, but it was oppression and poverty that kept us close together.
Mm-hmm.
If
Mm-hmm.
we like to look at and say, oh, Black Wall Street, Tulsa, you know, we
Right.
need to do that again, and so on and so forth. But what they don't look at is that there were certain outside forces that created Tulsa. And that is the fact that you couldn't go shop at this store. You couldn't live in this neighborhood. You could not go to this school. So when you have that, you have no choice but to build in your own community. So that's why when integration happened, all the people with money left. And then all the money in the community also left because now I want to go and sit at the counter in Woolworth instead of sitting at Mr. Strickland's counter at his counter store, at his soda shop.
Mm-hmm.
I want to go to Woolworth now. I can go buy these Levi jeans instead of buying the jeans that Miss Kathy was making.
Oh yeah.
So it was outside forces as well, but the black church has also been one of the most detrimental things that has happened to us.
In what way?
In the fact that we lost who we were. We began to accept whiteness as dominance, whiteness as better, whiteness is good, black is bad.
Mm-hmm.
When you don't have the self-esteem in your community to be able to know that you can achieve things, that your community can achieve things, then you put yourself in a position to always lose.
Mm-hmm.
So believing in their version of this God, and we all know he was a Middle Eastern man if he actually existed,
Mm-hmm.
but that's not what the black community believes. You go to most black churches and they got a white Jesus up there.
Right. Right.
You got the white praying hands up there.
Mm-hmm.
So they are still, and even though they may say that it doesn't matter, and they'll say, "Oh, color doesn't matter. Jesus' color doesn't matter." Then why do you even have a white Jesus?
Mm-hmm.
The book tells you that you shouldn't have any images or idols at all.
Right.
But you still got some, but you say, "Oh, we don't pray to that." Okay, well, let me come in and burn it or bash it or crash it. Let's see how does your emotions feel? If you have an emotional response, then you worship that thing to a certain degree. You may not bow down to it, but you recognize it. So
yeah.
But the institution of it has you to say that what did Seeley tell Sophia? Not this Sophia, but what did Seeley tell?
I'm sorry.
What did Seeley tell Sophia after she got into a fight with her husband with Harpo? And she told Sophia, this life is temporary, but heaven is forever.
Forever, right.
She was telling Sophia, go ahead and keep taking that ass whooping. Don't worry about Harpo beating you.
Mm-hmm.
Heaven gonna be so much better, and this is all just temporary. So think about that consciously.
Yeah.
Black people go to a church and they're told not to become rich. they're told that the last will be first and the first will be the last will be first and the first will be last. Hell, if you get into the concert first or you get into the concert last, did you get into the goddamn concert?
Right.
You got in the concert no matter what, right?
Yeah.
So who cares if you get in first or last? But all that sitting back, letting them have it. What does it gain a man? What is a man to gain a whole world but lose his soul? All these, they out there gaining it though, living a great life. But they telling you to stay poor.
Stay humble. Stay humble.
Don't worry about them beating the hell out of you, putting water hose on you, killing you in the streets. The police who are supposed to protect you. Don't worry about all that, because heaven is forever, and this is just temporary. See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Those kind of things are detrimental. When in 1804, I'm sorry. Go ahead. I can get on the road.
I was going to say, they just distort things, in my opinion. You know, it's okay to be humble, and we do understand that life comes with a certain suffering that we learn from. As a mystic idealist, you know, we know that consciousness has to learn through duality, which comes along with suffering. Exactly. At the same time, though, we're supposed to learn from our suffering, right? We're not supposed to stay perpetually stuck in it and then take accountability to make changes and advance and whatnot. And when you teach people to just turn the other cheek, to never even try, you know, that it's ridiculous. And that's why I agree with you. That made me look at everything sideways, because yeah, we're suffering and all, and we're supposed to learn from suffering, but you ain't supposed to be like that forever. You know, what's the point of that? And they also kind of condemn themselves with this whole scripture. Oh, the last are going to be first and the first are going to be last, meaning the people who created this money system, reward system, as they call it, right? Because it's your fault if you don't make enough money, because it's your lack of understanding how money works and your relationship with money. It's all your fault. But in reality, those people who hijacked these ancient concepts and distorted them, aren't they going to be the ones that are last according to their own scriptures at some point? Because the rest of us are going to wake up and see that it's a bunch of bullshit.
They theoretically, but see, but they cover themselves by the first and last, meaning something that's not on this earth. So they're not afraid of us waking up in the present. Not those people. They want them to stay hoping for the future. Now, when people wake up, now you're right about that. When people do wake up and they think about those things, but when you wake up, you separate yourself from that situation, and then that's when you go and you do your own thing. So, give you an example: 1804 Haitian Revolution. They were believing in Christianity. They were enslaved, but then they went back to their orishas and they revolted, and they whooped the French Quebec and the Spain and France. They whooped their tail, right? And when they defeated them, they became their own free nation. And as being their own free nation, the world has been trying to have been punishing Haiti ever since. Because what they don't want to see, they didn't want that to inspire other enslaved people to revolt against both Christianity and their masters.
They're slave owners, and they became the first Black republic, actually.
Yeah. And so when they became free, but the first thing they did was free themselves from the religion and went back to their ancestral religion. Now that whole first, last, turning of the cheeks and all those things, they become inconsequential to those people. And that was fearful to the establishment. And just sticking with the religion, that becomes fearful to the establishment of the religion, because the religion holds political power, the religion holds money, it holds land, but most importantly, it holds the minds of people. So they can't let that happen.
And that kind of gets back to the very beginning, like how this whole thing was founded, Christianity. Like first of all, what's your thought on this? Was Jesus like a real person, or was he a real person that was resurrected and all of this stuff? Like, you know how they tell you, I'm pretty sure you know the answer to that, but just to kind of be clear, we have a lot of Christians out in the in our audience, and they like to discuss about that topic. But what is your view about who Jesus really was?
To put it in the shortest version, so every year during Passover in Jerusalem under the Roman rule, but even under Greek rule, there was always itinerant pastors who was itinerant ministers who were calling themselves the Messiah, right? There was always somebody. Now the name Yeshua was a very common name, like John Smith, all right? So it's a very common name. Josephus speaks about at least 3 different Yeshuas in his annals, in the annals of Titus and the history of the Jews. Josephus talks about at least 3 different Yeshuas. So it was a common name. And you always had these itinerant preachers during Passover. So the problem becomes during the reign of Tiberius Augustus, and you're dealing with the Druids up in Britannia, and they're always revolting. You're dealing with the Jews, and they're always revolting. And the reason why they're revolting is because they have a tax. They're being forced to put a statue of Caesar in their temple, and of course you can't have any graven images. Mm-hmm. And they're supposed to worship Caesar. So this becomes problematic. And by the time you get into Nero, it becomes really problematic. And the job of the Roman emperor is to maintain the empire and expand the empire. So Nero got to get rid of this. And so he brings in Vespasian. Vespasian and his son Titus comes in, and they pretty much defeat Judea, right? After defeating Judea, they realize they know what they have to do, and that is to change the story. Because that's how Vespasian defeated the Druids. He changed their stories. He got rid of their religion. This Jewish religion talks about this military Messiah who is going to establish a real world kingdom and defeat whoever is oppressing them. Mm-hmm. So he has to change their story. So when you look at what Josephus' writings and you look at some of the other writings, you can see that there are parallels to the Jesus character to what Titus did. Titus ripped up all the fruit trees. Titus did a watchtower. Titus told his Roman soldiers to go and throw spears at the Jews who was coming out of the Sea of Galilee, and you will be fishers of men. Titus, rode in under with palm leaves as a victor. He tore down the temple every block. Titus did a lot of those same things. Then you got other Yeshuas who were high priests in the time frame that would have been the Jesus time frame. So they created, out of all the information about Titus and the different Jesuses and what the Old Testament says, because remember, Josephus, who became a Flavian, who he was defeated in Galilee, one of the first battles in Judea, became the scribe of Titus, and then had an apartment in Rome in Vespasian's house. They gave him wives. This man was a traitor to the Jewish people. And because he told them the stories. So with the story, so they took Titus, they took the other Yeshuas in his writings, and they took his knowledge of the Jewish coming Messiah, and they sent out a dude to go and start preaching all this stuff. This guy, y'all call him Paul, starts preaching all this stuff and writing these letters, and they basically created this religion based on that information and based on the goal of subduing Judaism from being this rebellious religion. Because Christians don't rebel against having the laws of Caesar. The Bible tells them that render unto Caesar what is Caesar's. Whatever leader or government you're born under, that's the one that God wanted for you. So God appointed that leader. That's why all these kings always believe that they were appointed by God. It tells you these things. Slaves, be good to your masters, whether they're good or bad. maintain
even the harsh ones. Yeah.
Even the harsh. Let the governments make you think that the governments are appointed by God, and God put you there on purpose, right? So the Jesus character, was there somebody walking around preaching and teaching? Sure. Did Pontius Pilate kill a whole bunch of them? Yeah, he was actually being called back to Rome for being so vicious, but the emperor died, and so he went back to Judea. Sure. But the actual Jesus character, the biblical Jesus, never existed. But multiple people meshed together to create this character.
Right.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And it created a religion. It didn't solve the problem. That's why Constantine had to try to fix it, but it was helpful, because there was still Jewish revolts after that, and then Christians start fighting other Christians.
Right.
So it's still a problem.
Well, church tradition says that the gospel is written by Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. So who actually wrote these books? I mean, they're named after the people, by the way, right?
Well, church tradition says that, but actual history shows that in 150 CE, Justin Martyr called it the wisdom of the apostles. And it wasn't until 182 CE that Irenaeus named them Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. These all were written anonymously. No one knows who wrote them. There are no indications of authorship, which wasn't uncommon in the era, but no one knows who wrote any of the information. It is all anonymous, and nothing is written at the time frame that any of the characters actually lived.
Well, so, what about the prophecies? You read all in the New Testament how Jesus fulfilled, some of the Psalms, mentioned in the Psalms, King David, or Isaiah 53, like all of this kind of stuff, was that really about Israel, or was that about Jesus, or what was all that stuff about in your view?
Well, it depends on which ones you're talking about. Like, for instance, in Isaiah, I believe, when he talks about the young woman who has given birth to a child, that's actually talking about King Ahaz's son. And in the original, not the one that they now have in your Bible, in the original, it says a young woman has given. And it uses the word Alma, which could mean young lady who's married, or young lady who's not married, or it can mean virgin. But if they truly wanted it to be virgin, they would use the word Bethula. But they use Alma, so it's ambiguous. But it said has given birth. They retranslated and edited to say is, or will give birth. The Christian books have. But if you go to the Old Testament, you go to the Torah, to the Jewish writings, it says has. So it's talking about Azaz, which is, I believe it might be a Hezekiah, or no, not that Hezekiah. It's somebody, I forgot who it is right now. But as far as other things, and Daniel is very good at this, it's written after the fact.
Right.
It would be like me writing right now that the New York Knicks and the Indiana Pacers, they're gonna find themselves in a game 7 on Saturday, May 31st. I write it today, but I backdate it as if I wrote it 10 years ago.
Right.
And we know people do this. This is what Vespasian did. Vespasian, if you look at some of the writings of Vespasian, he backdate things to make it seem like that he was prophesied. Or he backdate things to make the Julio-Claudians look bad. When Daniel's writings, you can look at the linguistic archaeologists, and the linguistic archaeologists demonstrate that this Daniel was written over a time period of like 100 years. Isaiah is written over 100 to 200 years, to the point where they break it down into different parts. Like the last part is, Deutero Isaiah.
Multiple authors, yeah.
Right. There's multiple authors in all of this stuff. So yeah, I can, if I've already seen it, I can write you something right now and tell you all about, the civil rights movement and then backdate it and say that my great grandfather wrote this, I can do that. And they didn't have technology like we have today, where you can look at the papyri or that you can date things. They couldn't do that back then. And then if the government said so, who gonna challenge you?
Right.
It ain't like today where you can challenge the government. Back then, you challenge the government, they kill you.
Off with his head. That's right.
They didn't have to be sneaky about it, like how we have to be sneaky about it.
No.
They just roll up, snatch you out your house, drag you by your head, and you're done.
You're done, man. Damn.
Yeah, so people can't get their minds into that mentality that they didn't have civil liberties like we got civil liberties.
Right.
So if the Pope said something, you accepted it. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, you get excommunicated, and now nobody else will deal with you. You starve to death, or they roll in with a military and they kill you. So you're not challenging those people back then. No, look.
Hell no.
No, they killed. Who they killed? Tinsdale. They killed Tinsdale.
They'll be more than happy to kill as many people as they want in the name of God.
Yeah.
Some evil bastards, man.
Galileo had to repent on his stuff because they threatened his daughter, and Copernicus never published his stuff until after he died because he knew what was happening.
Yeah, man. So, well, what about the Apostle Paul? Isn't all of his letters authentic, and isn't he just the kind of like help found Christianity in a way, or at least his church kind of won out over the Jewish church,
It did. They only think most scientists, most archaeologists accept that only about 7 of the letters are written by the same author. The rest of them are written either by students of his or just somebody. As far as who Paul actually is, there's this, as I alluded to earlier, I think he's an agent of Rome.
Yeah.
That was to create this religion.
So you're saying some of the letters of Paul are not authentic. You're saying that they were forgeries?
Not so much forgeries, just written by other people, and they said that Paul wrote it.
Oh, yeah.
Like, let's say I was a student of yours. Well, I'm going to write, and I'm gonna write something based on what you've taught me, but I'm gonna make it seem like you wrote it. Mm-hmm. So when it's studiographical like that, where somebody else is writing it, but I'm saying that you wrote it. So it's believed that some of the people might have been students of his or followers of his that actually wrote some of about the other 6 letters. Mm-hmm. But 7 of the letters seem to be authentically written by one person in or around that time frame of 50 to 79 CE. But even the story of Paul, like there's some problems with Paul. Paul never he never describes the resurrection. I mean, because he didn't see it.
Right.
But the thing that's really crazy is Paul never describes his transformation over into Christianity. Did you ever notice that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Paul doesn't talk about that.
No.
That's in Acts, and that's supposedly written by Luke.
By Luke, right. Exactly.
How many people had a transformation from one religion to another, and they don't tell their own story?
Right. Yeah, something fishy about that. I mean, a lot of people say, they have a lot of theories on that, like the naturalistic explanations. Like they'll say he had some sort of seizure, and he had some sort of he felt really bad, he went through some sort of guilt trip or whatever about killing all the Christians, and so he converted out of guilt or something like that. Do you have any specific theory or understanding about that? Because some of that just doesn't make a lot of sense to me, if I'm really honest with you. But at the same time, I don't think he actually, saw Jesus Christ, in some sort of vision, or I think it was just contrived. I don't know.
Basically, like I said, I think it's an agent from Rome that was sent there on purpose to do it. But the writer of Luke tailored the story based on the Bacchae, which is an incredibly popular play in the Greco-Roman culture, even up to that. Even though it was written like 400 or 500 years earlier, it was still incredibly popular at that time frame. And in the story of the Bacchae, you have where this person who was persecuting Dionysus, this king who he was persecuting Dionysus, and then Dionysus shows up to him dressed as a servant and asks, "Why are you persecuting my people?" And the guy becomes ill, and then he somewhat sees the light. It's not a direct copy, but you can see the inspiration, and especially when it's being written by a second party. It's like you can't really tell my story,
right?
But you got Luke, who didn't know any of these people, might have been a student of Peter if Peter existed, but Luke can't tell he telling Paul's story.
Yeah. How's he do that?
Don't even make sense.
Right. And then there were so many sects of Christianity in the first century, which a lot of different. How many sects were there that you know of, like denominations at that time?
I know there was the Valentinians, the Marcions, the Lucians, the Arians. Hell, and then the Gnostics. You had multiple versions of Gnostics. You had the Nazarenes.
The Way or something like that.
Yeah, well, the Way was a common term used by most of them.
Oh, okay.
That was just a terminology. But you had like others based on where they lived. Like you had the Orthodoxies in certain areas, like in the Abyssinians and all these other places. But I mean, it was a bunch. It was a bunch.
Pretty quick too. If it's in the first century, they kind of came out pretty fast.
Yeah, it doesn't take much. If creating a religion is not hard, especially if it's based on a foundation of another religion that has an opportunity for you to create it. So because there's the opportunity of the Messiah, it's easy to create a religion based on Judaism. In the same way, think about it. Joseph Smith was able to create Mormonism in a few years based on Protestant Christianity.
Right.
And he only needed a few years. I saw some golden tablets. Nobody else saw the golden tablets but me. This guy can validate that I saw the golden tablets even though he didn't see them. Oh, y'all believe me? Yeah. And we can all have, and hey, dudes, we can have multiple wives.
Yeah, that's even better.
That's even better. And we're gonna go out here and live on some land. And the Native Americans, the reason why they look like Middle Eastern is because Jesus came over here.
Oh, makes sense.
So, I mean, just a few years, he created a movement and was able to move all these people. Jim Jones created a movement. It doesn't take much when you're basing it on something that's already established. Now, you're trying to do something brand spanking new. That's hard. But this was based, but this was based on.
Oh, don't we know?
Well, how did Christianity, do you think, became the largest religion in the world today?
Violence.
War. Yes.
Yeah, war. You got
imperialism.
382 when Theodosius the First becomes emperor of Rome. Theodosius then forced the entire Roman Empire to become Christian. That meant that everybody from top to bottom had to become Christian, and then they killed anybody who disagreed. He formally established the papacy. I mean, it was established, but he formally, governmentally established the papacy. And from then on out, everybody was Christian or you died. If you didn't die, you was impoverished. Like the Britons impoverished the Celtics and the Vikings if they didn't convert to Christianity. But if you wanted to, you wanted some of that money, then you got to come on over here to Christianity. And then through marriages. And then when colonization began, that wasn't, hey, hi, can we borrow some land? No. They came over and they colonized Africa and the Americas and went over to India. And
I think the Mormons tried to convert the Hawaiians over too. Yeah.
And they're trying to convert everybody now. But it was through violence. Without violence, you do not have Christianity, Islam. Islam was spread through violence as well. but Christianity was definitely through violence, and there's no other way. The only reason, and this is something that helped me deconstruct, the only reason I'm Christian is because back in 1847, when one of my mother's side ancestors came over on a slave ship.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, not no, I said 18, didn't I? I mean 1747.
17.
No, 1847. No, 1747. 1747. I'm trying to remember. I got a lot of paperwork on my family. Came over on a slave ship, and that joker was forced into Christianity.
Mm-hmm.
And from that joker, there's a whole line that comes down to my grandmother. That's why. Now, also, because on that same grandmother side, the 5 civilized tribes were told that if you want to not get killed like the rest of them, convert over to this Christianity, dress like Europeans, and also take on black slaves. And so there was 2 ancestors actually of the Creeks who took on black slave and the other one just Creek, but they were forced into Christianity economically, and that trails into my grandmother's family too. That's why I'm Christian.
Gotcha. Just
if it wasn't for violence and economic pressure,
right,
I would never be Christian. But if I was in Africa, I probably still would have been Christian because they came over there and colonized.
Yeah.
Or I'd be Muslim because they came down there and colonized. So you're screwed over. It's all through violence. And that's why I think we have to find ourselves.
So that leads to the question, how can people really break free of this religious trauma, if you will, that's been handed down like that,
Study, research, listen. But here's the thing though. Even though we seem like we're small now, there are over 1 billion people today who have walked away from religions, right? People have been walking away from religion at a faster rate now than they ever have before. And a lot of that is because of the internet. Now, there's a lot of confusion out there. There's a lot of misinformation out there. So there's some back and forth. But because people now have access to the truth, to at least some level of truth, they're walking away. They're breaking those bonds. The millennials and the Gen Zs definitely have grown up in a less religious impact society and parents. But Gen Xers like myself have also been walking away because we've studied and we've seen the damage. So everybody's going to have their own little pathway and to deconstruct from it. But the internet is allowing us to do that. And the more people come out here and teach it, more people demonstrate it. But also, and this is one of the things that I tell people on my channel, the more we develop our tribe, not develop a religion or anything of that sense, but develop our community or ourselves. You can't be broke. You can't be in bad health. You can't have a nasty attitude. You can't be racist. You can't have all these things and think that other people are going to be attracted to what you do. So you got to get your life in order. So, I do some coaching, some side coaching on my people in some of the videos. If you notice on some of my videos, after the lesson, I'll talk about making yourself better, how to make yourself better, how to think better, how to detach your emotions, things like that.
I kind of wanted to go into that to find out, a little bit where you're at, like what is your ideas, about self-empowerment, reality, consciousness, people's inner self, things like that. Do you have some views that you kind of hold now that you find empowering?
If I understand you correctly, if I had to categorize myself, I don't necessarily say that I'm atheist. I'll tell you that I'm more of an agnostic. But my agnosticism, I had 2 teeth taken out back of my mouth, so some words are hard. But the agnosticism is supported on a foundation of alchemy and hermetics. Right? I've studied a lot of the Eastern philosophies and done a lot of the mystical work, still do some mystical work. But alchemy and hermetics is my foundation for thought. Everything has to bridge from that. So when I see a situation happening, I don't say that there's a God who's punishing me or a God who's rewarding me. This is merely the idea of cause and effect. For every cause, there's an effect. For every effect, there is a cause. There is no such thing as luck or chance or miracle. Those are just causations, those are just effects that we don't know the causation for. Right? Now, that comes down to the mentality. If I decide that I'm going to do something, but then somebody with a stronger will does something that would be opposing to what I'm doing, the strongest will is going to work. So you got to develop your mental strength, meaning that you have to truly know yourself, learn yourself, dig deep, and be truthful and honest with yourself. I have the capacity to do certain things at a high level, but what I would have to give up to do that, I'm not willing to give that up. So I find my level where I can give enough energy to this capacity to get at least this much out of it. But I always know that somebody with a stronger will may interfere. So I got to protect that. So I have to develop myself to do that. Right? So to give you an example of that, like I had a cigar lounge in Atlanta. Right? I also had a popcorn shop 2 doors over. I have the capacity to run both those businesses. But what I gave up was my time, and gave up a lot of my time. So do I really want to give up that much time? So now that I moved to San Antonio and I'm thinking about opening a cigar lounge again, how much of my time do I really want to give up? And then compared to other lounges around here, how much of their will, their marketing, their infrastructure is going to hurt or help me? You see what I'm saying? So it's like all those kinds of thought processes that I go through, but from a hermetic standpoint, you know, knowing that it takes masculine and feminine to create anything. So you can't be all instructional, but you can't be all nurturing either. You need a balance between the two. As Sophia talked earlier, she talked about having duality. You got to have the duality of balance, the duat, in order for you to be able to manifest anything. And if you don't, you got to, and the first place you got to do that is within yourself, you know.
And you know, that duality is where you derive all your, you know, meaning in life, you know, and purpose in life, and where you can kind of refine the soul. Like you can really strengthen your mental abilities by having that challenge out there, to having that sort of dual push. You know, everything's pushing against each other, and so yeah, I agree with that 100%, man. That's what it's all about. You know, and we try to build a community here where we can sort of explore a lot of these concepts and stuff. But one thing I wanted to do, I don't want to, you know, it's almost an hour. I don't want to hold you up way too long. You just let me know if we're going on too long. But I did want to go over just a few questions. Looks like I saw in the chat. I'm pretty sure you may have saw that, and I just wanted to.
Oh, I can see chats. Oh, I didn't even have it over there where I could see the chats. I didn't even know people were talking.
Yeah. So we have our own Al Harding. He says hearing a lot of cherry picking to justify one's excuses for life, but no encompassing all aspects of the Bible, not even offering a solution that's better. I guess what he's saying is you're cherry picking the Bible in order to find an excuse for something. I don't understand. Maybe you understand what he's saying. You can address that.
Yeah. So his comment is very problematic in multiple ways. Okay. So the first thing he's talking about, hearing a lot of cherry picking. It's very interesting to me that Christians or people who believe in the Bible call out when other people only talk about scriptures here and scriptures there, because that's exactly what Christians do themselves. So, well, keep the question up for me.
Oh, so sure.
I know, I'm sorry, cover Sophia, so I see why. But it's kind of, you're being a hypocrite when you would do cherry picking on your own to justify aspects of your Bible, and then you want to call out somebody else when they only are having a conversation based on a certain question. Now, he's talking about justify one excuses for life. There is no excuse for life. Life is an existence. I'm not looking for an excuse not to believe in the Bible. I don't need an excuse. The Bible provides all the reason and the rationale for me to not believe in it. But he said, but not encompassing all aspects of the Bible. It is an impossibility to encompass all aspects of the Bible, because that is the mindset of Christians, where they believe that the Bible speaks with one voice. But there is no univocality within the Bible. The Bible does not speak with one voice. The Bible, at one hand, talks in the Old Testament. To put it short, the Old Testament God is very different than the Jesus character. They are not teaching the same thing, right? The Old Testament God says that all the law, all the rituals, all the commandments are to be followed in perpetuity. Jesus just said, I'd come to not take one tittle from the law. And Christians manipulate that to say that the only thing they have to follow is the commandments. So do the Power Rangers, the Hebrew Israelites. They do the same thing as that. So they cherry pick, and it doesn't have this one voice. And as far as offering a better solution, the better solution is to look within yourself. You can take it off now, but the better solution is looking within yourself and knowing yourself, recognizing that the purpose of existence is existence. Not a God, not to get to heaven, none of those things. That you get to decide what you live for. See, many Christians think that, many Bible believers think that if you don't have the Bible, if you don't have Christianity, you don't have anything to live for. I have my children to live for. I have the joy of every day to live for. This is how, to the Lord, I break it down to the simplest things. We discovered, me and my wife are coffee snobs. We discovered a new coffee bean yesterday, and it is delicious. I live for the moment that I can drink some of that coffee and sit on my back porch with a cigar. That moment right there is enough. You see what I'm saying?
I know that's right.
So people like that, really, they're just, I feel bad for them, because they're emotionally connected and they get charged from that. Because if everybody don't agree with me, then it's what does that say about me?
Right.
And a lot of people just base their entire identity on those beliefs, and without it, it's like they feel like they have nothing left. And I think that's one of the main issues. Like you said earlier in your story, it wasn't just that. It was easy to say, okay, I don't believe in this, but then you also had to walk away from friends and sometimes family, and all that kind of makes it more complicated, I think.
Yeah, it does. And a lot of these people don't want that. I didn't see the other one that you popped up real quick. It was real quick that you had up there.
Oh, hold on 1 second. One said, each Jesus from each gospel aren't even the same Jesus.
You know what? And I'm gonna make this, and let me do some cherry picking.
Yep.
Because I don't know if you just recently, I don't know if you've seen the video. I just did a video about this the other day. Yesterday. The Jesus of Luke and the Jesus of Matthew are separated at birth. They're separated at birth because the Matthew Jesus was born during the time frame that Herod was king of Judea. The Luke Jesus was born at the time frame of the census that was conducted in Judea by Quirinius. Well, Herod died in 4 BCE. The census was done in 6 CE. So if Jesus was born during the time frame of Herod, he could not have been born during the time frame of the census.
Right.
So therefore, you even starting out from the very beginning with a different Jesus in Matthew than from the Jesus that you got in Luke.
Yeah.
They separated from birth. And of course, in my video, I went to a whole bunch of details, but there's a lot more to it as to show how they are not, that the stories are contradictory to each other.
Yeah, they'll say, well, that's not a contradiction. That's just, a different viewpoint. But it's like, to me, that's an obvious.
A different viewpoint is me saying that, oh, that shirt is orange, and you saying, no, it's burnt orange.
Right.
This is somebody saying that, yeah, on May 31st, I saw Renz in San Antonio, and somebody else saying, "Nah, I saw him in Bangkok
Yeah,
on the same day,
exactly. That's a
at the
contradiction.
same time." Yeah, it's not happening. That's a contradiction.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I
Exactly.
mean,
And
it goes deeper into that contradiction.
I mean, even the whole Trinity thing seems very tense as a concept, without a contradiction. Even if you didn't want to say it was a contradiction, which it seems to be, just semantically, this person is the Father, is the Son, is the Holy Spirit
Mhm.
at the same time and in the same sense.
Which
So,
didn't even happen. That didn't become permanent doctrine until 325. Prior to
hmm
that, there were some who believed it in the third century and second century, but the overwhelming majority of Christians in first, second, and third century didn't believe that. Most of them had a Gnostic viewpoint that Jesus was a created being or just a great prophet. Which
hmm
is why when you actually translate, I think it's John 1:1
hmm
in from the Koine Greek,
yep,
it should read, in the beginning the word was a God, and that God was towards the God. And that's how that should read,
was it
because
Theos with the
right,
lower
it's
case?
Theo. Well, no, not lowercase. So in Koine Greek, when you want to show the top God, you will put a definitive article in there of tone. So
Mm,
because when it talks about the God, it put ton theos. But when it talks about the Logos being God, it just says Logos ton. And in English, because we would translate that, you would put the a God in there, but it would be Logos tone is just word God. Just it
hmm
wouldn't translate. It doesn't translate completely over, but it would be not the God. Like
Right.
when the Greeks would refer to Zeus, he got the definite article. If they're talking about Apollo, he doesn't get the definite article because he's not
hmm
the God. You see what I'm saying?
hmm
So it's more like that, and that's
Yeah,
why.
it even reminds me of the Hebrew, where we talk about El and then Elohim, and a lot of people get that confused. Like, I think El is like the God, and then Elohim is like some plural um, type of rendition of that name of off El, like maybe some other lesser God or something like that.
Yeah. So you got El, which is God in the masculine, Eloah, which is God in the feminine. You got Elohim as gods and goddesses. Now, there are some instances where Elohim can mean a singular God
hmm
when the adjectives and everything around it, the verbs around it, will give that indication. So, like in Genesis 1, uh, it's plural when it talks about man,
hmm
but when it talks about creating the earth, it's singular. You see what I'm saying?
hmm
And when it talks
hmm
about him walking in the cool of the garden in Genesis 2, it's singular.
Gotcha.
So it's depending on the wording around it. Is in the way that they wrote, the wording around it determined whether it was plural or singular. But in most cases in the Bible, it's plural.
Right. Right.
If they really wanted to do singular, they use L, or
hmm
yeah. So that's how that is, and all they're doing is worshiping Enlil anyway. So
But it's yeah, but it's like you said, this stuff is accessible now that we have the internet. We have all this information available. People can really study this stuff in order to, kind of escape out of religion. I'm sort of anti-authoritarianism. So I don't want to say I'm anti-religious because that sounds kind of bigoted somehow. But
yeah,
I'm just I don't know. I'm just very suspicious of systems that lock people's brain down where they can't question.
yeah, but you're gonna have to create a
I
system
would
that free most of the people.
Yeah,
Let's
yeah,
be honest. Let's be honest. Most people are sheep. They ain't going
yeah.
nowhere
They ain't going nowhere. Exactly.
unless it becomes a movement.
hmm
You've heard of the law of
right.
innovation of diffusion,
The law of
law of
diffusion.
diffusion of innovation. Yeah.
No, go ahead and explain that.
Okay. It's better if I draw. Can you see me?
Yeah, I can see you.
You can see that, right?
Yep.
So if you're starting something new, 1% of people are ready to do it immediately. Right? These are the ones who actually are doing the research. These are the ones who got podcasts like us, right? After that, you got this 3%. 3% of the people, after they see that 1%, they jump on it. Those are the ones that are in your comment section. Those are your followers, the ones who's been there with you. Then you got this 15 to 18%, right?
Yep.
These are the ones who build movements. These are the ones that they have studied, they've listened to you, they went back, they researched your information, and they come to understand your movement and what you're doing. Right? These are your first adapters. All right. So then the problem is there's a tipping point. Your movement has to get between over 15 to 18% movement, right? Once you get that 15 to 18% movement, there's the 36% who are called early adapters. These are the ones who now will join the movement and it becomes a movement. This is when a company gets big. When they get into this group, a company gets big. Now, after it becomes, now these people, they join this 15 to 18% and this 36%, it has to become safe for them to join it. They have to know they're not going to lose their family. They have to know they're not going to lose their job. They have to know that society is not going to talk trash about them and look down on them.
Right.
So they have to feel safe to do it. Then this last 36%, whatever, as their side starts losing, that's when they'll start joining. They're late. It's real safe now. Matter of fact, we see too many churches closing down and mosques closing down. We really ain't got nowhere else to go but over here. You got 16% who they ain't changing unless the world ends. Right. So I never care about the 16%. So I say all that, I point that out because it takes a movement. It will literally take a movement to get people to get free of this. You know, Haiti showed us that it took a military movement for them to become free, right? For them to fight, to galvanize. And I guarantee there were people, even in Haiti, who was like, no, we shouldn't be fighting them. You know, it's against God and all this shit. You still had them, just like you had, as I was telling you earlier. And I know this for a fact because my pappy used to live on the same street as Martin Luther King. And he introduced me to and told me about how some of these pastors who were against him. So there is always going to be those who are against him. It's like that family member. It's like those people who, when you say, man, we need to build a Black Wall Street, all they're going to do is come in and tear it down or come in and burn it and come in and flood it as if it's 1927. Like we ain't got guns.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Things have changed, you know.
That's them 16%.
Yeah, the negative Nancy's.
Yeah, so you're always going to have them. But you got to build a group. You got to build a movement. You really, it has to be a movement, and it starts out with a charismatic leader. And it's not the charismatic leader that builds it. It's the ones, those first, that first 3%, that 1%, 3%, those are the ones who build it.
And, you know, things change. Like, you know, I remember in the mid 2000s, you know, they had the, what was it, the Four Horsemen, the new atheist movement. And they had like Sam Harris and Richard Dawkins and, you know, all of these folks. And it really moved a lot of people out of the church. I remember looking at some of the, you know, the Pew, you know, the statistics, you know, and they were showing that church attendance was falling steadily around that time. It was like a drastic drop, and it's been continually dropping. But now, you know, it's almost like we're seeing another shift where there's like, you know, people talk about a lack of meaning. You know, now society with the internet and with all these distractions, people are lacking meaning and hope and purpose and all those things that religion traditionally filled that spot, you know, for folks. And now they're seeing that, you know, the nuns are a growing group, people who are spiritual, not religious. as kind of a reaction to all of these things,
Yeah. And there's a study that shows that for every one person who becomes Christian in America, 3 people leave Christianity.
Mm-hmm.
And COVID really hurt churches because people stopped showing up, right? Where they couldn't show up, but then they didn't come back. And so the money stopped, or the money went. And now the buildings are closing. People are turning the churches into bars and condos. Everything else.
Strip joints.
See, in Atlanta, there is one that was turned into a strip joint.
Yeah.
Wow.
There's 2 of them that were turned into clubs. So
wow.
Good.
I think here in Florida, good. I know here in Florida, the church came out a few years ago. They were really mad because there's a Native American reservation, and they had acquired this land, from the government, and then there was a church that was going to be sitting on there or something, and they turned it into a casino or something like that, or maybe a strip joint. I forget exactly what it was, but I remember all the Christians. Yeah, and the Christians got really pissed off about it. We're like, "How can you do this?"
Right. Oh,
makes God sad.
But then they'll be the first one to say that the church is the body, not the building.
Yeah, that's right.
You're worshiping the building.
Right.
And that was my biggest problem when I was Christian and I was a deacon. I was chairman of the deacon board, and for a while we only had one pastor, and I wouldn't let the other associate pastor preach because he was stupid. Because he would say dumb stuff, so I couldn't let him preach. But I used to give sermons, and I would teach teen church, and I lost my train of thought. I had a point. What did you say right before that?
Denied.
Oh no, I remember. So I used to piss off people because I would be in there giving sermons, telling them that, look, y'all claim to be Christian, but you're not even doing it according to the Bible. You want to do things according to doctrines of man and how culture has changed what this religion means. And I will point out things that if somebody from 500 years ago came into a church today, they would swear that almost everything we do here today is hypocrisy. So we need to find out what the real was, what was really going on, what the real message is.
Right.
And I'm not saying the 500 years ago person was right, but y'all jumping around and running around the church and screaming and yelling 500 years ago, that was heresy, and you had a demon.
Yeah, you had a demon possession. Yeah.
Right.
I came up in Jehovah. Well, I didn't come up in it, but I joined Jehovah's Witnesses when I was in my early 20s.
Ooh.
And it was like, oh man, I was there. I became a ministerial servant, which is kind of like a deacon, in a church.
Yeah.
And sitting in on all decisions and going out and doing shepherd work with the elders and stuff like that. And man, it was always about, we pride ourselves on being just like the first century congregation back then. We don't believe, from the social pressures and all these other things, what the churches have turned into, they've just become part of the world. And Jesus said, we are not part of the world. We're in the world, but we're no part of the world, So we used to really pride on ourselves. Like, we hold meetings. We hold meetings in our houses. We'd have Bible study in the house. We'd go door to door, just like the early Christians. We didn't believe in Hades, or hellfire or any of these sort of Greek influential sort of beliefs. And it's like, but where do you draw the line? Because if you really go back to the first century, you're going to find out some things that aren't too comfortable in today's life to try to adapt into. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, did y'all give up all your worldly possessions?
Exactly. Yeah. It's like, well, symbolically.
Right.
It's everything's spiritual when it's not convenient. It's
the whole
meant
thing
spiritually.
Sorry, am I lagging again?
No, you good.
Oh, I wanted to say when you said the whole scripture about that be in the world, but not a part of it, it actually says not of it, which in my opinion is saying that materialism is and everything happens within consciousness and comes from consciousness.
Right. And that's the same, that's the mentality of the Quakers and all those people.
Mm-hmm.
But they all
I think there's a close relation. Yeah, I think there's a very close relation between Christianity and materialism anyway.
Oh, you're talking about philosophical materialism. Yeah, okay. So
yes.
I would see it more like it's a dualistic sort of movement, because I think it was influenced by, obviously the Jews, obviously the Greeks and Romans, and these are pretty dualistic sort of, notions of the body.
Right,
the
but I mean, they're
soul,
all materialists. They think everything comes from matter, and it's all about just that, the material reality.
Yeah, like there's a material world of the flesh, and then there's a spiritual world of God and the angels. What would you say about that, Lorenzo? Is that kind of bear out in history, sort of materialism or a dualism with that philosophy?
It does. It does. The first time the first time in this historical process of man, the first time somebody started establishing land and communities, people started acquiring things, possessions, started becoming something of a way to judge somebody or to uplift somebody. And so we really couldn't help it unless we remained hunter-gatherers.
Right.
And wandered and followed the herds. Because as soon as you establish a village, well, whose house is whose? Who lives in this house? Who lives in that house? Well, whose crops are these? Whose crops are those? Who wife is that? Oh, these two families get together through forced marriage, and now they got 500 heads of cattle. Civilization, having civilization in that format creates materialism
and dominionism.
Yeah, because it turns everything into an institution.
Yeah. So it's just something you can't escape when it comes to, unless you just want to wander around chasing animals and eating berries. So
yeah, well, there's Buddhist, a lot of Buddhist convents, kind of practice this, philosophy of, the mind. It's a mind science, in a lot of these, a lot of that kind of stuff, and so they sort of make the mind primary, like mentality and stuff like that. But I see what you're saying, because if you look at like even the Bible, the works, have dominion over the earth. There's this dominionism that comes out of it, where it's man's job to name the animals and to take over the earth and do with it what you will, which I find kind of weird, because like if you look at like today's Christians, you have these environmentalists, right? But then you have these folks that are against the environmentalists, and usually they're Christian, like evangelical Christians. And you would think if God gave you the earth, weren't you supposed to take care of that shit? Like, are you supposed to be more mindful, take care of the earth? But it seems like they're like, we don't give a shit. The earth was given to us to rape it. She's asking for it.
Let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
Does a man who abuses his spouse still loves his spouse? Does he think he still loves his spouse?
He may.
He thinks that, yeah.
Right. So let me make sure I put it that way. So a man who abuses his wife still thinks he loves his spouse, right?
Yes.
I got dominion over the earth, still abusing the hell out of it.
Yeah, but I love it.
But but that's just
men like that. I'm not saying men like, but anybody who's like that. They love the benefit. They love the benefit of you. That's what that is. We like the resources, and we want to take all of that, and we have to beat you into submission so you can let us keep taking.
And that's where
what's going to happen? Yeah, and what's going to happen when there's nothing left to give and Earth gets rid of you like the cancer that you are? What you going to do then?
Start over. Start over.
Like we did before.
Like we did 9 to 12,000 years ago. Start over.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yep. Start over, and then it's what is it? The Hopi Indians say that we're on our 5th start over.
Yeah. Cycle.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of kind of stuff like that. I think there's actually some Buddhists that think there's been like 86 Earths. So we've done this shit like over and over and over again, according to some people. Because
you asked the question earlier about consciousness, because everything vibrates, nothing dies. Everything is a cycle.
That's right.
There's death, there's destruction, and there's rebirth. There's destruction and rebirth.
Yeah.
And we are not special in this universe that we don't go through the same process.
Right.
Exactly.
We're not outside of nature. We are inside nature. We are part of nature.
We're smack in the middle of it.
Yeah.
And there is nothing outside of nature, because all of the universe, all of existence is nature. Nature is existence.
That's right. The nature of reality.
Yeah. The energy of you has always existed. It just wasn't you all the time.
Right.
Like you will never be you ever again. This whole idea you go to heaven and you still know who you are and you know your mama and them and all that shit ain't happening.
See, I kind of feel like we come from a field. I think we're all like an excitation of some field of, that incorporates, mentality, mind. All of that stuff is, you can't compute consciousness though. You can't really, like you can copy data, you can copy numbers. I don't care how, complex the program is. You can actually copy it and paste it somewhere, but you can't do that with a consciousness. That's sort of like a field of possibilities or something.
We can't yet.
It's just pure awareness, but you no longer identify with the person and the things. Like you're no longer Scott. Who the hell is Scott? When you return to pure consciousness, Scott doesn't exist. You probably won't even remember that.
No.
I mean, think about it. Do you remember Sophia before you was a baby?
Hell no.
Exactly. So when you leave this one, you ain't gonna remember shit about this one either.
No,
you won't. And I had a little bit of like, I guess you could say that DMT is kind of like a death experience, and I experienced it with that, and that's how it was. Like Sophia just disappeared. I didn't even know who that was. That there was no remembrance of this world, so to speak. It was just another level of awareness, and that was it. It's just a transition. You go from one state of awareness. Yeah.
Yeah, the self is like a narrative. It's like a story you make up. You make shit up.
It's like a script. Yeah, and we kind of get lost in the script for a little while, and then
I was on this one shamanic trip, and I left my existence, and I felt the existence of being a crocodile, and then the crocodile was hunting this deer, and then I shifted and I was the experience of the deer being hunted by the crocodile, and then the blade of grass, the lava and volcanoes and all that. And what was funny is the next morning I looked up, and everywhere that I felt the volcano and the lava and the earthquake, one happened in those spots.
That is amazing.
I don't want to get you demonetized, but on this shamanic trip. So
it's all good.
That's freaking amazing to actually be able to experience the state of consciousness of a predator and then also be able to experience the hunted. Yeah. That's insane, man.
Here's what's crazy. The hunted don't know that it's being hunted, don't know that it is the hunted, and the hunter doesn't know it's hunting. It's just instinctively.
Wow.
Nature. It's instinctively acting nature out. Yeah, and
that is so amazing.
It was a wonderful thing. I'm sorry, they're remodeling the bathroom. Sorry.
It's all good. It's like
what psychedelic, if you don't mind me asking. I'm sorry, Scott.
No, you go right on.
If you don't mind me asking, Lorenzo, what psychedelic exactly did you experiment with at that time?
Magic mushrooms.
See, I never done those. I'm gonna have to do that.
The stoned ape theory.
Actually, it's funny you mentioned that. I'm working on a video for that. I am working on a video for that right now. And I was so mad because this other guy that I follow put his out yesterday, and I was like,
"Oh, really?"
Yeah, I was mad. I hate when people I follow put out something that I'm working on, because then I feel like I'm copying them.
Oh, yeah,
but,
yeah.
I will say this: never do it by yourself. Meditate beforehand. Clear your mind. Rid yourself of as much anxieties as you possibly have. Even though on small doses, it is used for people with PTSD to mitigate.
That's what I have.
Yeah. So I would say microdose for a while first before you do a full. I know it's cost prohibitive to do that, but at least microdose. I mean, you pay $60 for something, but it's gonna last. But
Cookie, shut up.
Yeah, there's and have some citrus fruit around.
Scott, mute me.
All right.
You want to have some citrus fruit around, because if you start feeling a little too crazy, you eat the citrus fruit, and it'll help take the edge off.
Oh,
but
you know,
I am not recommending that anybody do this.
Don't you kids go do drugs now. We're not saying that shit. Y'all need to stay away from drugs, because drugs are bad.
Smoke weed every day.
While I call my guy later on this afternoon to get some.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, we just talked about it last night that we need to call and get some more.
Yeah, man. Man, I got a whole bag, man. This thing's lasted me for like 2 weeks so far. So, like,
see, I'm gonna have to find out where you are, Lorenzo, because I'm also in Texas.
I'm in San Antonio.
Oh, you're in San Antonio? Yeah, it's about 3.5 hours from where I'm at. I'm like right outside of Dallas.
And that's not far. Yeah, it's like 3.5 hours. Actually, I'm probably going to drive up to San Marcos in a little bit.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Cool.
Yeah, we well, it's driving up there for a restaurant. Me and my wife, we love food. So. As y'all can tell, but
what?
But I will say this: I am having a meet and greet event October 31st through November 2nd in San Antonio.
Oh, cool.
I'll be putting the information out on my page tomorrow. No, not tomorrow, but Monday.
Mute the mic.
Been working on it. And I'm making it as low call. We finding as many free spots we can go to as possible, because this will be my first time doing this. And it won't be heavy lecturing or anything of that nature. It's really just I've got people who've been following me for years and they've never met each other. So I want an opportunity for them to meet each other, but also for us to grow.
So when will that be again? You said it's in October or November?
October 31st to November 2nd. So the weekend, Halloween weekend.
Halloween weekend. Okay.
Yeah. And it's gonna be here in San Antonio.
Shoot, I like to come on through, man. That's what I do. Crash party.
That sounds really good. I mean, I would
She went out. Yeah,
she went out, man.
I definitely got to fill these hotel rooms, otherwise I got to pay for them. So.
Yeah. What if I bring a lot of DMT or something? We'll go see Jesus together.
I know. And Caleb, the interesting thing that Caleb just put up there, that he's in Kentucky. Like last year, my wife and I went on a cross-country motorcycle ride. And so basically what I'm getting at is, when I travel, I do let people know when I'm traveling on my page. And if I can meet up with people, then we meet up. So I've met some of my folk, because we roll up into different cities and we meet up. And ain't gonna lie, half of the time, most of the time, is at a cigar lounge, because that's part of my lifestyle.
Right on. My brother, he's a big cigar connoisseur, man. So he's introduced me to that stuff. Because I moved here to Florida probably about 4 years ago, and I think for 2 years he's been trying to really introduce me to cigars and stuff. And so yeah, I'm starting to hang out at lounges, and it's real relaxing, man. I like it. You know, it's really cool.
Yeah, if these people weren't in here working on the house, that's where we'd be right now.
Yeah. I was about to smoke a cigar on our live stream, you know, because I thought you would, but then I saw you didn't have one, so I was like, fuck it.
Because on other people's streams, they don't, you know, I don't know if they allow that sort of thing. And then, you know, so I was just like, well, I started to, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
I don't know. He didn't say, where's the cigar? I was waiting. If you'd have said, where's the cigar? Then I would have hit my wife up real quick. Bring me a cigar and some coffee.
For real. No, yeah, we're pretty laid back here. I mean, you can pretty much tell we joke around and talk shit.
Yeah.
You know. But look, man, I don't want to hold you up too long, man. I know you've got a day ahead of you, and
yeah.
But I do want to say I appreciate you coming through, man, and sharing your time with us. That was really awesome.
No, it's my pleasure. I appreciate it. I appreciate being here, and thank you.
Yeah. And yeah, Sophia's got to be out. Looks like she's having a technical issue. So this is a good time to sign off.
All right.
Yeah, man. Appreciate you, man. You have a great rest of your day, man. And I'll definitely be catching up with your next videos and shows. Is there anything you wanted to plug while you're at it before we head on out?
So anybody who want to follow my channels on Facebook and YouTube, they are both at CoachRenz 33. Even though it says Deconstructing Christianity, the way to find it is at CoachRenz 33 on YouTube and Facebook. Tomorrow we are doing. You have to go to one of my my live that I did yesterday, but I mean on my last live. But in the description of that, I am doing a financial seminar tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time frame. It's an Eventbrite event called Financially on Fire. It is only $10 because, like I said, I'm working on the wholeness of the type of people, the people that follow us. It ain't, you know, we need to get our health in line, our money in line, because other people won't walk away from these religions if they believe they're waiting on manna from heaven, or they got or paying these tithes. So that's why I do financial seminars and things of that nature as well, and credit restoration and credit building. But other than that, I would love to have a whole bunch of people come here for that October weekend, that Halloween weekend. The more people sign up, if right now, not to be honest, even though I got a bunch of people on Facebook and YouTube, I'm only expecting about 10, 15 people to show up.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna show up, man. And I've got your email. I've got your email, so we're gonna definitely stay in the loop on that, because I'm always looking for a reason to take a road trip somewhere, do something. You know, I'm just by myself, you know. And so, hey, you know, that sounds like some real good stuff. And damn it, Joel, you always come in late, man.
Oh, I got a couple of them who always show up at the end.
Man, this dude.
You starting over, you're gonna have to rewind it.
For real.
I got about 4 or 5 people who do that all the time. and my shows are at a consistent time frame. My shows are Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time is when I do a live.
Right.
And they still show up late.
For real, man. Joel, you're a troublemaker, man.
I don't want Joel to come over to my page, because I already got, you know, this guy Tim and Raph and Trauma and Sean. They already troublemakers. I don't need Joel.
Troublemakers. For real, you know, so you're not invited, Joel.
You understand the words that are coming out of my mouth?
Exactly.
Yeah, man. Well, I'm gonna let you go.
Yeah, so my wife, she sent me a message. She done made lunch, so you know.
Okay, let's do it, man. Have a great lunch. All right, Joe. We're gonna catch you on the rebound. We will catch you later on, Lorenzo and Sophia. Everybody have a great day, and we will catch up later.
And we're gonna have to schedule for you guys to be on my show. You guys are gonna have to come on my show.
All right, when is that? You just let me know, man. You've got my email.
I do Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So tell me, you guys have a conversation. Tell me what day y'all like to come on.
Yep.
And it'll work. Okay.
Yeah. Anytime, man. All right, brother. We're gonna catch up.
Appreciate you.
All right. Peace.
Peace.